first thing you might notice when looking at the HPIR form is that it is really 3 inspections in one. In addition to the very first section, which simply provides detailed property information such as the case number, address, lock codes, property type, and other basics like that, there are 3 sections which are labeled conditions for conveyance, the initial inspection, and finally, the property condition report. Okay, just remember that this entire section deals with providing HUD information about the overall condition of the structure and its systems and whether major components of those systems are missing or damaged. Things like HVAC condensers or furnace components, major electrical components, built-in appliances, and sewage systems. It doesn't really deal with whether those systems are operable. Remember, we're going to check that out later in Part 3 of the HPIR, the PCR. Part 1 just reports whether those systems seem to be present and free from damage. It deals with property conditions that are not likely to be fixed or repaired, but are conditions that will be there through the life of the property until it's sold. Also under Part 1, there's a section Additional Conveyance Condition. Let's take a look at those questions. Is property damaged? And you'll note a reference to Section 11 above. If you've noted damage on any of the components we've already discussed, mark that yes. B, mortgagee neglect resulting in property damage. If you see any kind of issue where damage is at the property because the lender, the bank, did not appear to properly preserve the property, for instance, a roof leak that was not repaired or at least tarped that resulted in, for instance, extreme ceiling damage, that would be mortgagee neglect. Question C, is property damaged by fire, flood, hurricane, tornado, earthquake? Some of this may be difficult to determine, but use your best judgment here if you see any type of damage that seems to have resulted from one of these conditions. And finally, did you observe visible evidence of mold, excessive wetness, or standing water? If you see mold or what appears to be mold, excessive wetness, standing water, then simply note it there. We're now looking at the initial inspection report, Part 2 of the HPIR. First question, is property located in a hot zone? This has to do with boarding requirements or whether or not boarding's even approved in that area. Again, consult your property manager to determine if a particular property is in a hot zone. You'll become familiar with them after a while. Are all HUD locks changed to proper HUD key? Hopefully we'll always answer yes, because we know you'll do your best to change the locks to the proper HUD locks while you're at the property. Is the house secured? All doors and windows? Again, hopefully that will be yes, but if there are issues that you cannot correct or you cannot secure at the property, then mark that no. Is the garage secured? Outbuilding secured? That will be the same type of logic there. Make a note of how many locks installed, lock boxes, doorknob sets, deadbolts you've installed at the property in the section below. If there's a pool, whether it's in ground or above ground on site, noted in the next few questions, and whether it's secured to HUD specs, whether there's pool fencing that's intact, whether the gates are secured at that pool. Note whether any carpet is stained with feces or urine. Very seldom will the carpet be in perfect shape. Many times it will be a little or a lot dirty. But specifically what we're looking here for is biohazards in a sense. Urine or feces staining is usually grounds for having the carpet removed. Are there any buckles, holes, or trip hazards on the floor? And of course, if there are, we're going to take pictures. The next section deals with winterization. Go through the individual checkpoints and mark the appropriate checkbox to indicate whether the water lines are drained, meters disconnected, water's turned off, and so on. The next section deals with boarding, whether there are any broken windows or window panes, and if so, how many, and if so, what their location and size is. If the windows are boarded, are they properly boarded per HUD specifications and regulations? Again, you can consult your property manager for those specifications. If there are broken windows, has all the broken glass been removed? If there are missing doors, unsecured doors that are boarded, how many are boarded? And are there any boards over hatchway or cellar areas? Are there any cracked windows? To the right, there's a section on roof damage and whether it's been tarped, patched, or otherwise repaired. There's a general question of whether there's any emergency or preventative repairs needed, and whether there are any damages resulting from a roof leak. Condition of downspouts is noted, as well as a question about the overall condition of the roof, whether there's any damage or defects to decks or patios, and whether there's any damages or defects to chimneys, if any. There's a section for inputting information about debris, if any. Remember, the mortgagees should remove all debris from these properties, both interior and exterior. But if there isn't any debris or hazard, there's a checkbox for that, and note it that way and list the location of debris. Try to give us an idea of how much there is there at the property in cubic yards. And if there's any personal property in the interior of the property, note it in the question there. Same thing for the exterior of the property. Tell us whether there's any debris on the exterior of the property and whether there are any abandoned vehicles. Is there a sump pump on site? If yes, is the power on? And if the power is on, does the sump pump seem to work? Is there any standing water? Is the basement flooded? If so, how many inches of water are in the basement? In the section on interior and exterior walls, note any general damage to interior or exterior wall coverings, whether there's any graffiti present at the property or any violation notices posted. Under the section on initial yard maintenance, note whether it appears that the bank did a reasonable job of maintaining the yard. Typically, you'll want to see the yard cut to no more than 6 inches. And you'll want to see that the tree limbs have been trimmed away from the house. If there are any dead trees that pose a hazard, let us know about that. Finally, if you see evidence of lead-based paint or any kind of paint surface peeling, cracking, scaling, or chipping, note it in the final question. Now, it's important to understand that there will be times that it won't be necessary to perform all these checks because you may be able to tell that a particular system doesn't work by a visual inspection alone. For example, if the exterior HVAC condenser unit is missing, you can be pretty sure that the HVAC system just doesn't work. The same is true for the electrical system and plumbing. If major problems are evident in the wiring, like a missing panel, or in the plumbing, like open or missing plumbing lines, then you can judge that system inoperable based upon what you see. Just be sure to take pictures of the defect and describe it in the report. There may also be times when you don't want to power up a house because of unsafe conditions. If you see open wires in areas other than simply missing outlets, it's not a good idea to backfeed the system. Also, backfeeding electrical systems when there is standing water around electrical components is not a good idea, obviously. Remember to always play it safe and use caution since you will be handling 220-volt electrical lines. Always wear the proper gloves, shoes, and clothing. So take a few minutes to look over the systems before beginning the backfeed process. It will save you time if you find obvious problems and will also prevent trying to power up an unsafe system.